Hey guys, welcome to this second ring tutorial. I want to show you guys how I dialed in, what my methods were, and I want to break it down from the people who still aren't getting the ring system, all the way up to some people who are getting it, but they may not know certain tips and tricks that I myself use to be able to be a lot more accurate. Now, spoiler, this particular shot is a hole in one. However, not every shot I take obviously is a hole in one. Not every shot anyone takes is a hole in one. But I can break it down, and I'm going to break it down into 10 easy steps, and then I'll give you a bonus at the end of the video. Okay, so we're going to start out super simple. And to start out super simple, the first question is, what exactly is a ring? So we're just going to focus on this ring here. And I'm going to select a drawing tool. We're going to choose red because it shows up the best. Okay, so hopefully I can make a straight line here. Straight enough. Sorry, guys. Okay, a ring is not the whole ring. Like the center that you see yellow, that's actually two rings. And then you got orange up top here, and you got orange down here. So that would be four rings from this orange to this orange, although we don't necessarily measure like that. This is how we go about, figuring out what a ring is and how to use it. So one ring is one half of the yellow. Two rings is one half of the yellow plus one half of the orange. Three rings is one half of the yellow, one half of the orange, one half of the blue, so on and so forth. So, the next step would be how to read a ring chart. So I'm going to do that for you next. And for those of you guys who already know this, stick around because it's just going to get more and more advanced as we go forward. Okay, so now I'm showing my ring chart from golfclash.io. If you want to go make your own, go to, I believe it's Tools, Win Tools, something like that. But you basically put your clubs in, the clubs that you use the most. You could put all your clubs in, or you could just put, specific ones that you're using. And we'll just go from the top here, the extra mile. But I'd like to do two to show you guys something kind of neat. Actually, I'll wait for the end. That's actually kind of part of the bonus. So here we see extra mile 7, accuracy 45. Well, if the accuracy was a perfect 50, these numbers would be a little bit closer, but it still works. And this is what I believe is the most important way to do it. Okay, so we have extra mile 7, accuracy 45. That gives us 2.2 miles per hour. If we have a 2.2 mile per hour wind, we're going to adjust just one ring. However, I like to round these numbers when I'm first learning. As time goes on and you're playing in a tournament or for high stakes, you may want to either print this out or you may want to have it up on your computer screen. It'll be very helpful for you, to be a lot more precise. But if you can't have this handy with you, I just want to explain really quick what we're looking at. Now I'm showing you the extra mile. I'm going to show you another club as well, but this goes for all clubs. So as you can see, we have different ratings here, and there's max, mid distance, and minimum distance. Max distance is for when you stretch out your driver as far as it could go and it starts turning red, and no matter how far you pull on it, it'll stretch out a little further, but then it snaps back like a rubber band. So if you're going to go the full distance of your driver, then we're going to go with the max number that you see in this box here. Now, if we're going to go with minimum distance, and I'm jumping over this on purpose, we'll get back to mid. If we're going to go minimum distance, what that is the third box, and that's the exact opposite. That's that little area where if you move your club any closer in towards you, it's going to switch from your driver to your wood. So if you're in that area, as you can see, the values do change because you know, the rings get a little bit smaller, and I'm not really, you know, I don't have all the information in front of me, but this sheet that you can make makes it really easy to understand. So for example, let's just say I have a 10-mile-an-hour wind. Well, if I'm going by memory and I just round this number and make it 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, then I know a 10-mile-an-hour wind is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rings here. However, if we're at minimum distance, 1, 2, 3, it's actually 3.5 rings. So you see that there is a difference whether you're going maximum or minimum. But I don't expect you to remember this by heart. What I generally do is I remember the max numbers, and I try to keep a lot of my clubs a certain way. Again, I'm already trying to spoil the surprise and give you guys the bonus. You guys, some of you could probably already figure it out. Now, mid is exactly that. You're not stretching it out all the way, you're not pulling it in all the way, but you're somewhere in the middle. And this doesn't mean you're 1 inch away from a full drive or you're 1 inch away from a min drive. This is about the middle. You should be able to make just about any shot with one of these 3 adjustments. Now, some of the apps have sliders if you want to pay for an app, but if you don't want to pay for an app, you know, just either go with full distance, go with minimum distance, or try to find the middle by moving your target forward and backward, seeing how far out it'll go, seeing how far you can move it in before it turns into a wood club, and that will tell you basically how that is. So, and then you'll see there's different values. All these values are based on accuracy. So, you know, if you have more accuracy, like Thor's hammer here, well, then it's 1.8 miles per hour per ring on up. So, you know, like I showed you with the 10 mile per hour example. Now, this is where I want to show, this is actually number 3 already. This is where I want to show a bit of a difference here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the big topper. Now, don't let the fact that I'm using the big topper deter you in any way. If you're using an extra mile, but your extra mile is a low level extra mile, like an extra mile 3 or something, or maybe even extra mile 1, you're going to notice that it is 3 miles per hour is 1 ring of adjustment. So if we're playing with our extra mile, pretend this isn't the big topper, let's pretend this is the extra mile, and you know, you got a really low level, you're going to be looking at numbers like this, and let's say we have a 7.5 mile an hour wind. Well, we are going to adjust it. If we're going with our max distance, we are going to adjust it not 1, not 2, and not 3, but 2.5 rings. And now if we have that same 7.5 mile an hour wind with a club that is 100% accurate, like the sniper is here right under it. Now, you know, the quarterback's also 100% accurate, but I don't use that club very often, so I didn't need it for my cheat sheet here. But the sniper for a 7.5 mile an hour wind, as you can see, is 7 rings. Or you can also round this, so whether it's 7.5, let's say there's a 8 mile an hour wind. Well, I would just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rings. If you have the chart in front of you, go ahead and adjust 8.5, but with an 8 mile per hour wind, if you adjust 8 rings, you're still going to be pretty darn close and dialed in. Like I said, when you play tournaments, sit in front of your computer, if you can, and go by these actual numbers that you see here, or you can also print this out. You know, this would be 3 sheets. So one question that a lot of people ask, though, the reason why I showed these two, they say, why do you have to adjust more for a more accurate club? So once again, 7.5 miles per hour. Let's make this easier. Let's say 9 mile an hour wind. If we are using the big topper, we only have to adjust it 3 rings. But if we're using the sniper, we have to adjust it 8.5 rings. Well, that don't make sense. The sniper is more accurate. So why are we moving the sniper so much more than the big topper is a question that I'm getting a lot. Or your extra mile, because some extra miles have an accuracy of 15 as well. And the reason for that is the more accurate a club is, the smaller the target is. And it doesn't matter how small your target is, the wind is the wind. It's still going to blow just as hard. So what they did here is they figured out the values between your extra mile or big topper in this case, and let's say a sniper, we could say a rocket, we could say a quarterback, a rock, it doesn't matter. They figured out the values of these, and basically if you move the big topper 3 rings, let's say to the right, and you move your sniper 7.5 rings to the right, you're actually moving both clubs the same distance. It's because the sniper's target is so much smaller than the big topper. So that answers question, which was actually number 3. Another question that I want to answer with this video that I get a lot is, do using different balls have different effects on the wind? And while the answer is yes, it may not be yes in the way that you're expecting it. Now, if we look here, I'm going to zoom in. I'm using, it doesn't matter that it's a Santa ball, but you can see over here that it's a Santa ball. However, I'm using this would be a Wind 5 ball. And as you can see, it says minus 55%. So let's just make this simple and let's just call it minus 50%, okay? Just, for math. So if I was using a basic ball or a ball with 0 wind resistance, instead of 6.3, this number would be 12.6, okay? So because it's 6.3, I am only going to make an adjustment for 6.3. Whatever wind shows up is the adjustment you make. If I was using a basic ball or a power 5 ball but with no wind resistance, well then I would be making an adjustment for 12.6. So whatever number shows up under this arrow here is how many rings you're going to adjust for. I purposely put a wind resistant ball in because I wanted a better chance at getting a hole-in-one, because obviously there's less room for error if I'm adjusting only 6 rings as opposed to 12.5 rings. So that is answering the question that I get a lot about, if you use a different ball, you don't have to figure out the equations. I don't have to figure out what 55% of anything is. It does that for me, and this is the answer right here, 63 or 6.3. And then when I make my adjustment, it's a simple 6.3. Now, the fifth thing I want to cover, and this is very important as well, is you see where I'm here. Now, one thing you'll notice, we're still on the same slide, but I have full left spin on. You can tell Santa's facing sideways. You can kind of see this little red dot here. I don't know if that's his nose or whatever, but that red dot signifies the amount of spin and the direction. So here we can see I'm using about 2 or 3 back spin and full left spin. So if we look at this picture here, this is exactly where I want my ball to land, bounce, and head towards the pin. This is my first step, is setting up exactly how I want the ball if there was 0 wind. This is where I want to be, like right here is where I'd want to be if the wind was 0, right? But the wind's not 0. So this is basically how wind ring works. We have a wind in this direction at 6.3 miles per hour. So what we're going to do using the ring system method that I just showed you is we're going to back up this target here 6.3 miles per hour worth of wind, and it's going to cancel. These two are going to cancel each other out. I'm just saying this so like it makes sense to you. There is another thing that you have to consider, but just to make things simple, right here at this point in time, 6.3 minus 6.3 is 0, right? So what I'm going to do is I am going to put this area right here. I'm gonna move the screen so that this goes, that's supposed to be an arrow, this goes right here, and then once the take shot button is even, okay, so once the white line here is going to be here on this line, right? So once I do that, then I'm going to pull the target back towards me, not moving the ball, but actually moving the screen. So, and you'll see this, I got video, I'm going to show you the video again. We're going to walk through the video that I showed you at the very beginning. But you're gonna have this lined up with the take shot button, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the bottom half of the yellow, 6 is the top half of the yellow, and then 0.3 is a little less than halfway up, right about where that dot is. I'm going to put the take shot button right here is where it needs to be, and then right where this dot is, I'm going to put my thumb or index finger, whatever you use, and I'm going to slide that down until right where that red dot is even with this line that they provide for us in the game. That means I am taking 6.3 miles per hour off, and because this is a sniper, it's very easy to do because it's basically one ring equals 1 mile per hour. So I'm moving at about 6.3 miles per hour. Now this is not taking into account elevation or anything. We're just keeping it simple. It's the economy, stupid. We're keeping it simple, stupid. same type of principle. Number 6. I've already showed you number 6, and it's right here on the screen. I'm just going to recap it with you. I didn't realize I already covered number 6 here, and it's a shortcut, and we are going to change colors here. We'll go with a purple line, and hopefully we can go right about through the middle. Okay, so if we went through the middle, the way most people adjust is yellow's 1, orange is 2, blue is 3, this green is actually a clear ring, that would be 4, and white would be 5. So you would pull it down to the middle of the yellow, and you'd still have 1.3 miles per hour to adjust for. Well, you don't have to grab it perfectly in the middle, or you still can, but it'll still let you slide your finger a little bit past this red line down here. So what I'm doing, instead of adjusting at 5 and then readjusting, setting it back up to adjust at another 1.6, all I'm doing here is I'm adjusting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, top of the yellow 6, and then a little less than half into the orange ring would be 6.3. And you can go further. If you have 9 rings to adjust, if this was a 9-mile-an-hour wind, well then we would just go all the way up to this point right here where the white ring and the clear ring meet would be 9. So you can pull it past. It doesn't have to stop right in the middle. And a lot of people will set it up for 5. They'll have a 15-mile-an-hour wind, and they'll do 3 different things. And you got to watch your time. You know, if you run out of time up here, you know, you want to take these shortcuts, and that little shortcut has definitely helped me. You just pull it right on past. If there's trees in the way when you're trying to make your shot and you zoom in and the leaves and everything completely cover your target, you're looking at a tree trunk, whatever it is, well then you can flip your screen around. So instead of this arrow pointing between the I and the N, it's actually going to be pointing straight down, and this is a reverse adjustment. So this is, you only need to reverse adjust when, like, maybe your shot's somewhat in a sand trap and it'll jump back and forth, you know, it won't go exactly where you need it to go, or there's an obstacle in the way. So if we have a 6.3 mile an hour wind and we need to do a reverse adjustment, well then we're going to do the opposite of what I said before. And we're going to make it so the wind is coming at us, which means we're going to need to adjust up instead of down, because we needed to rotate the screen because there was a tree branch in the way. You'll come across this. This may not make sense to you now. It may make sense to you now, but it may not make sense to you now. But at some point in time, you're going to hit the ball. You could be on the fairway, but when you zoom in to make your adjustment, you're going to be like, this darn tree's in the way. Well, you can flip your screen around so the arrow is pointing straight down, and then what you would do is you would take this line. We got this line here, and instead of pushing from this point down here up, we're actually going to take the take shot butt line and put it in the middle first, and then we're going to push it up instead of back, because you always fight against the wind. If the wind's blowing in your face, then you're going to push it up. If the wind's blowing to your back, you're going to pull it back. We're basically, once again, just like I said before, we have a 6.3 mile an hour wind. We're just canceling it out. So minus 6.3 zeroes it out, and then we have a 0 mile an hour wind to take our shot. Now, do not get this confused. Every time you make a shot, you want to make sure that your arrow is pointing straight up in between the I and the N, just for a reference point. The only time you do it in reverse is if you have, trees and obstacles. Yeah, I'm not an artist. In the way of your target, so you can't see. But if you were to rotate the screen around, well, then that tree would not be in your way. It would be on the other side of the target. That's the only time you use this. Now, on this particular hole that I am showing you, there is a 30 to 35% elevation difference from where the tee shot is down to where the target is. It's called a 35% elevation drop. Most elevation changes are about 10%. So this is a very steep one, and it's excellent for this example here. When you have elevation changes, your ball is either going to be in the air longer because the ground you're hitting it to is lower than the ground you're standing on to take the shot, or this is a lot rarer, but it does happen, or sometimes you're actually hitting the ball uphill and you would under adjust a little bit. Now, when someone says adjust 35% or adjust 10%, basically just do quick math. So with a 35% extra adjustment, as I was showing you before, what we wanted to do here is we wanted to adjust 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.3 was right about there where that red dot is, right? Well, now we're going to need another color dot because we need to, we'll go black. Now we need to add 35%, or approximately a third. What is a third of 6? It's about 2. So we're looking at right where that blue ring is, right where the blue ring meets the clear ring, ish. That's right. It's not a perfect science. You can't get 1/10 of a ring on your small, even if you're using a tablet, it would be really hard. But that's what it means. Now, there's nothing on screen to signify, hey, the elevation of this hole is 35%, or the elevation of that hole is 10%. You just got to kind of use your eye. The main time you'll hear about elevation is if you're watching a video on how to play a certain hole, or if you're watching a tournament knowledge video. With a tournament video where people are telling you how to take a shot. They'll say, hey guys, make sure you add 35%. So if this was straight, zero elevation, it would be right where the red dot is. That would cancel out the wind. Instead of 6.3 up, 6.3 back being 0, well, we have to account for elevation. And as you can see, it's not much more of an adjustment. If I didn't account, because of the way I adjusted with the full left spin, I was able to actually back away from where most people take the shot right here. And, you know, they had much less margin for error. But by using a ball that had wind resistance 5 and side spin 3, I was able to bring my target over here. So even if I forgot to adjust, I still would have been just a little bit beyond the pin for an easy putt. But that's not what the wind ring system's for. If that were the case, we would be eyeballing everything. So that's why, you know, I threw the elevation in there as well. Just, you know, for tournaments especially, just take notes. You know, what is 1/3 of 6? You know, what is 1/10 of 6? 1/10 of 6 is very, very little. So, you know, it really comes in, you know, and that's why you use these special balls as well, because it'd be a lot easier. If this was a 12.6 mile an hour wind and I had to figure out 1/3 of that, it might take me just a moment longer, and it would be a much bigger adjustment as well. Double, as a matter of fact. So, what also is affected is if you go over cliffs or if you go over large bodies of water. Anytime you go over a big space like, you know, a cliff or, you know, a large body of water, like I just said, you automatically are going to add 10%. And now I'm not talking about this little second jump here. I'm talking about from where you hit the ball to where the target is. If now, in this case, it's just elevation, but if this were perfectly flat and there was a big body of water for me to land my shot here, which a lot of shots do have a big body of water, then, you know, I would just make a 10% adjustment. 10% of 6 would be about half a ring, if that. So, you know, not much of adjustment, but hey, if you're making that adjustment and your opponent isn't, guess who's going to win more shootouts? So I just wanted to cover going over large bodies of water, cliffs, and, you know, elevation and its effects. Now, I also wanted to cover, this is the last thing before the bonus, extended ball guides and contracted ball guides. So in this particular case, with a 6.3 mile an hour wind, the ball is actually, let me erase these lines so we don't get, there we go. The ball is actually going to come in on the same line. It's going to hit in that same exact spot, right? As long as we adjusted for wind. But the problem is, because the wind is blowing in that direction, this first bounce is going to go a little further because the wind is pushing it. Your second bounce is going to go a little further than the second bounce shows. The third bounce also a little further, and then, you know, just pretend that's going in the opposite direction. So you need to make room for that as well. Maybe add one extra bar of backspin than what you would usually do. Make sure, for example, let me erase this real quick. The best example I could give on this would be, I wish you could see this, but the resolution when you take a picture of a video isn't that good, but that hole is about right there. And the ball guide of the sniper is very long. However, it looks like it's going to fall short. I did that on purpose because I know that these jumps, these bounces, are going to be ever so slightly extended. So I wanted to come up just a little bit short. You don't adjust a whole bunch for this. You don't even adjust a full ring for like a mile an hour. You got to figure there's 6 miles an hour. There is no actual calculation that I can think of, but keep that in mind, especially if you have a 10 mile an hour wind at your back. You know, there's a lot of tight jumps. There's rough bumps. There's a lot of cases where you're going to have to take into, well, maybe not rough bumps, but where you're going to want your ball to jump over the sand. Like, for example, let's say this hole is right here. right? So if the hole for this particular, if the flag's sticking up, yep, that's a golf flag, and the actual hole is right here, well, then you're going to need to put a lot more backspin on. And in some cases, it may actually look like you're going to get stuck in the rough or you're going to get stuck in the sand because of how much backspin you're using. But you need to make sure to know that you're going to be okay, because with the wind blowing at your back, the ball's going to travel a little further than it looks like. You're going to get that little extra push. Wow, that I need to turn that into like art class or something. So, but this does happen. This happened just about 2 or 3 tournaments ago, where you had to jump over a sand trap, and then you had very little room on the green until you were on the rough again. So you had to use a lot of backspin, and you actually had to set it up. You actually had to set it up to where it looked like your first bounce was going to be here instead of there. And then the wind would actually carry it to here, and then because you'd get away with more backspin, your ball wouldn't have went sailing past the flag. It would have actually stopped in time for the flag. So always pay attention if you got wind at your back or you got wind at your front. It also, same thing, if the wind's going to your side, left side or right side, as soon as it bounces, it'll kick out to the left a little bit or kick out to the right a little bit. Now, it's not going to kick out a lot. I don't want you guys making extra adjustments. I just want you to be knowledgeable of this. And when I say extra adjustments, I mean, don't be like, oh, I have to adjust it an extra 4 or 5 rings. No, it's nothing like that. It's just a tad bit more, maybe like one backspin, one top spin, one left spin, or one right spin, depending on the way the wind's blowing, just for correction. Some of these fairways are real skinny. Sometimes you're flirting with the sand in the rough, so I already spent too much time on that. Now, the last thing I want to go over is how I set up my bag. And I'm just going to come here to show you guys how I set up my bag. I set up my bag specifically for when I'm out and about to play Golf Clash and I can't pull up all this information, right? So I don't know, like, I love using Thor's hammer, but the fact that it's got an accuracy of 64 means that, we got 1.8, 3.6, 5.4. It's hard to figure out the fractions for these numbers. So I like all of my clubs that I bring with me to be close to one of 2 or 3 different numbers. And what those 2 or 3 different numbers are, in my case it's only 2 numbers, but in some people's case it might be 3. The accuracy should be at either 100 accuracy or 50 accuracy. I consider this Extra Mile 7 with 45 accuracy to be close enough to be 50 accuracy. And what that gets me is this. With any club that is 50 accuracy at its max distance that is not a rough iron or a sand wedge, it is going to be 2 miles per hour per ring. So that's so easy for me to know in my head. Every club that's 50 accuracy is 2 miles per hour per ring. So if I get an 8 mile per hour wind, and I'm using my extra mile, I know I just have to go 4 rings. Because 2, 4, 6, 8. Now I know that says 8.6, but it'll still work until, unless you really want to cram these numbers and, learn them perfectly. I mean, to me, that makes this more of a math problem than an actual game. Obviously, if you can have your chart by you, you'll be more accurate. But if you want to play at your mother-in-law's house because you don't like the topic of conversation, if you want to play at work because, there's nothing to do and you don't want your boss to catch you, so you don't want to pull it up on the computer, whatever it might be, if you look, that really works. Let's say we have a 14 mile per hour wind. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So I would move it 7 rings. Well, according to this ring chart, this here at 7 rings says I should move it 15.1. You're like, aha, RJ, take a look. You're incorrect there. Well, actually, I'm not, because I'm only off by 1.1 miles per hour of wind. 1 mile per hour of wind, you don't even make an adjustment really unless you're trying to get a hole in one there. So the way I set my bag up is I like to go with my extra mile, because, at a lower level, 50 is about the best accuracy you're going to get on a long distance club. Of course, unless you got a really high upgraded Thor's Hammer or Apocalypse, we're going to go extra mile. And then take a look at this. Sniper, 100% accuracy. If a club is 50% accuracy, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, each ring is 2 miles per hour. If a club is 100 accuracy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. One ring equals 1 mile per hour. I could have a 10 mile an hour wind, and I just know in my head, hey, the sniper has 100% accuracy. Now, let's say I didn't have the sniper. Let's say I had a Viper or a higher level Guardian where it's like 90 accuracy. This will still work. 90, I wouldn't go much further than 90. I like to be within about 5, like 95%. Or up here we have 45. I could go up to 55, and this will still work for me. So when I'm making my bag, I want a driver that's somewhere between 50 or 100 accuracy. Not in between. It's got to be either or, because as you can see, this doesn't work for clubs that are 35% accurate or for clubs that are 64% accurate. Use these clubs when you can have a sheet by you. Let's go down to the next one. What is my next favorite? Let's see, we got the long iron. I like the Saturn. What's the accuracy? 56. Let's just call that 50. Does that work? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It's still 2 miles per hour of wind equals 1 ring. So as long as I know my Saturn is not a 100% accuracy club, which you'll just learn this like secondhand throughout playing the game, it just makes life so much easier. What's my favorite short irons? Well, it's the Thorn and the Hornet. I use the Thorn much more than the Hornet, but when I was a lower level player, I would use the Hornet. What's the accuracy of the Hornet? 96. Does that work? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's, because it's not exactly 100%, you can see it does, with higher winds, it does get a little bit away. But if there's a 9 mile an hour wind and I adjust it 9 rings, I'm only off by 1.2 miles per hour. So this is just, I'm telling you like how to do it in your head. Obviously, if you have the chart in front of you, use the chart. And then the Thorn is closer to 50. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. What am I counting? I'm counting the miles per hour for every ring I move. I'm just going to pull a number out of my butt. If I get an 8.5 mile per hour wind and I got my Thorn, that's simple. I'm going to go 4 and a little over. 4 and a little over. Because, okay, let's make this easier. Let's say I get a 9 mile an hour wind. Well, then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 rings is 8, but 5 rings is 10. So I want to go 4.5 rings for 9. So if I have every club in my bag as either a 50 or a 100 accuracy, all I have to know is which clubs are 50 and which clubs are 100. And that makes it so much easier for me. So that's the way I set up my bag when I'm not playing in tournaments, when I'm just playing whatever it is, and it works for other clubs as well. Like I have 25 accuracy on my big dog, but if this was a lower level big dog, like many of you guys might have, it would be 3 rings. It would be just like the big topper, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, so on and so forth. So if you need to throw a club in with 0 accuracy, that would be your 0. 0 equals, you might want to write this down because I know it just sounds like a bunch of numbers. But if you write this down, trust me, it will make sense. 0 equals 3 miles per hour, mph. So that what that is saying is 0 accuracy equals 3 miles per hour per ring. 50 accuracy equals 2 miles per hour per ring. 100 accuracy equals 1 mile per hour per ring. If you write that down, you know, just so you can understand, as opposed to me talking and getting confused, it's just a very easy way to set up your bag. I've already spent too much time on this, but I hope I answered a lot of questions for you know, beginners, so on and so forth. One last thing I want to do, though, to wrap this up, is I want to watch this again, and I want to tell you guys exactly what's going on in real time in my head. Okay, first what we do, this is about where we want to be. Now we're going to put full left spin on to compensate, because we don't want to be in between those bunkers, and we know we're going to need backspin. Now I'm putting that ball guide right before. Now, I think it's kind of important. I'll hold it here. You see how the ball guide is stopping short before the hole? The hole is about an inch. No, it's hard to measure. It's probably about a quarter of an inch short of the hole, but that's done on purpose because I know that the wind is going to carry it a little bit further. Now I'm satisfied with where it's at, so I simply put the white ring even with my take shot button, and now I just count 6 rings up from this white ring. White, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, the yellow is 2 because we cut it in half. 6, and then we're also adding the 35%. 7, 7.5 rings is going to be my adjustment with elevation. And then trust in the ring system. Take the shot and hit it perfect. I hope this video helped you guys out. I know there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of number crunching and everything that goes on, but it really is simple. It's just hard to explain. I really wish I could just kind of like have a classroom full of you guys where you could raise your hands if you have questions, but that's what the comment section's for. Make sure you leave a comment if you don't understand something, and I'll be more than happy to help you out even further. I hope this has helped you. If it did, please leave a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button with the bell notifications. I do a lot of streaming. It would be awesome to have you join me in the stream. We have very active chat when I do stream, and we get into some crazy conversations. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.